Welcome to Phase 2 of the History of the Attorney of Color project, created under the auspices of the James W. Cooper Fellows of the Connecticut Bar Foundation. I am Judge Robin Stewart Johnson, chairperson of the project. Our mission to preserve the history of attorneys of color began over 10 years ago at the Connecticut Bar Foundation. Phase 1 of the project produced a historical timeline documenting the journey of attorneys of color from 1880 to 2012. This timeline was debuted on April 13, 2012, at a remarkable symposium entitled Our History, Our Future, Celebrating Attorneys of Color in Connecticut. The event was co-sponsored by the 4 affinity bars for attorneys of color in this state: the George W. Crawford Black Bar, the Connecticut Hispanic Bar Association, the Connecticut Asian Pacific American Bar Association, and the South Asian Bar Association. On April 13, 2012, attorneys throughout the state of Connecticut attended a symposium hosted by Judge Juliet Crawford and attorney Vanessa Avery on the history of attorneys of color. The symposium was hosted by Quinnipiac University School of Law, and the keynote speaker was Professor John Britton, former professor of law at the University of Connecticut. At the beginning of this project, the committee recognized the importance of documenting milestones in the legal community. The written timeline was displayed at the symposium in 2012 and updated at the second symposium in 2022. The 10th anniversary symposium was held on June 29, 2022. The host was Quinnipiac University School of Law. Attorneys, law students, judges, and educators gathered to celebrate the highlights of progress and commit to the future of this project. The chairperson of the project was Judge Robin Stewart Johnson. The keynote speaker at the second symposium was attorney Natalie Braswell, Connecticut's first African-American comptroller. One highlight of the 10th anniversary was the special message presented in video form by the then U.S. Attorney for the District of Connecticut, Vanessa Avery. This video oral history will capture the reflections of the pioneers in our community in their own words, as they remember their past, highlight their present, and look to the future. They will share their perspectives about how they succeeded in circumstances where there was no guarantee of such success. The project's mission is to document the stories of both well-known and unsung trailblazers who persevered in order to succeed in this profession. Therefore, they'll provide equal access and opportunities to future lawyers. The road they traveled from childhood to law school, through their careers and beyond, will provide that insight and inspiration. Attorneys of color have made many advancements in all areas of our profession. The number of managing partners at law firms, academic leaders, judges at all levels of the judiciary, both state and federal, and corporate attorneys of color has increased significantly. This project will celebrate and honor those advancements. As it has since its inception, our project has relied on the support of the 4 affinity bars, each which has identified lawyers from all sectors of the profession to be honored. We hope this project enlightens and educates the public, helping to promote continued inclusion in the legal profession. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are the touchstones of our current model used to enhance public confidence in the justice system. And our project highlights the great strides that have been made in this arena. Finally, we hope to inspire young people in this state, allowing them to see themselves in the people who are recording and let them understand they can reach for the highest echelons of the legal profession. We are thankful for the collaboration of the Connecticut Bar Association during the creation of this important inaugural phase of the Oral History Archives. Thanks to the supporters who have allowed our project to prosper, and a special and heartfelt thanks to the incredible attorneys who will be sharing their journeys with us.
Good morning. I am humbled and delighted by this opportunity to participate in today's celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Attorneys of Color Symposium. It is a distinct honor to address you on this important occasion as the United States Attorney for the District of Connecticut. I wish that I could be with you in person to celebrate the many accomplishments of the members of the Connecticut Bench and Bar, and ultimately of our legal community as a whole, over the past 10 years. It has been quite remarkable to watch and experience. While we are still very much a work in progress on the diversity, equity, and inclusion front, there is certainly much cause for celebration today. When we held our first symposium in 2012, it was both an opportunity for solemn reflection on our history in this state and an opportunity to reimagine our future. Together, as a bar and in collaboration with the 4 affinity groups for attorneys of color, the Connecticut Asian Pacific American Bar Association, the Connecticut Hispanic Bar Association, the South Asian Bar Association of Connecticut, and the George W. Crawford Black Bar Association, we envisioned a future in which attorneys of color are fully integrated into our law firms, corporate law departments, nonprofit organizations, academia, and government at the federal, state, and local levels. This meant not only seeing diversity at the entry-level ranks, but also in the leadership of institutions in each of those legal sectors. We knew then, as now, that diversity, equity, and inclusion matters not just for appearance's sake, but to enhance our decision-making and the public trust in our system of justice. The more the legal system reflects the people and communities we serve, the better our community engagement and ability to increase public safety across the state. That vision has already begun to take shape. In the past decade, we have witnessed historic numbers of attorneys of color being elevated as judges to both the state and federal courts. There are now several more law firm partners and multiple managing partners who are attorneys of color. Our corporate legal departments are much more diverse and inclusive, and in just a decade, we have had many more law school deans and professors of color. Indeed, the very leadership of the Connecticut Bar Association and Bar Foundation have changed. Through the deliberate efforts of many of you and others who have long been committed to this important work, we have witnessed many historic firsts in leadership and watched our institutions renew and expand their diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments more broadly. And these achievements are not just to be celebrated by attorneys of color. They are achievements for the entire legal community to celebrate. None of this progress would have happened or endured without the strategic efforts and long-standing support of countless mentors, advisors, and allies, including attorneys, judges, and other professionals who are not themselves people of color. These individuals have understood the importance of equal access and equal opportunity, fairness and justice, even within the employment sector of the legal profession itself. They have worked hand in hand with attorneys of color and taken action to ensure that all qualified applicants have a fair chance to compete. This has included notifying and encouraging qualified attorneys to apply for judgeships and other leadership opportunities, advising them during the application process, connecting them with other professional development resources, and challenging them to bring the best version of themselves to the table. I am and will forever be grateful to all those who encouraged and supported me in my own pursuit of such opportunities. In her inaugural poem for the country, The Hill We Climb, Amanda Gorman reminds us that as Americans, if we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it. Because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. And this truth and this faith we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. Even as we continue our collaborative efforts to make greater strides, the importance of celebrating and archiving our history cannot be overstated. Whether we do so with historical timelines, video interviews, in-person events like today's symposium, or through some combination of the three, we must continue to capture the rich history of attorneys of color in Connecticut. I therefore extend special thanks to Connecticut Superior Court Judge Robin Johnson for her pursuit of bringing this important symposium to fruition, along with Judge Barry Armada, Liz Drummond, and the entire symposium planning committee, moderators, and panelists. Best wishes for a successful symposium.
We didn't have electricity until I was 8 or 9. We didn't have an indoor toilet till I was 10-ish. So it was pretty primitive living. What poor people, quote unquote, in that part of the world had, though, is they had land. We had almost 2 acres of land.
It is humbling for me because this is a legacy and words are important. History is important. So humble I am. I've been taught to be humble, but this is major for me.
I was born in a rural village on a farm in Pakistan, and my 8 brothers and sisters. My childhood was really very interesting, very joyful, and I would say full of love.
So I was born in New York, born in the Bronx, lived in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and then at 11 years old, my family moved to Puerto Rico. And it is there where I learned my Spanish, because my first language is in fact English.
My brother and sister and I grew up in the South. It was a little bit difficult at times because we were mocked, I'll put it lightly, and often we would go to places where people wouldn't wait on us. And as young children, we had no idea why that was happening. And I think that sort of contributed a little bit to my being introverted early on, because I wouldn't understand when I went to a place in public how people would react so negatively towards me without me having done anything.
Neither of my parents graduated high school. Both of them had lost both of their parents by the time they were 10. So they were raised by other family members, aunts, uncles. But I never knew racism. Nobody ever called me a nigger my entire life. But we were black, and we survived being patrons of the small town of Falmouth.
I had the fondest memories. The more I think about my childhood, it was one of the happiest, though it was also challenging childhood. We didn't have much resources. We didn't have much means, but it was wonderful childhood.
So when I went through school and then eventually to high school, I participated in a lot of different activities. I was on the debate team and the mock trial team, but I was also on, volleyball, swimming, and track, and other programs, and took a lot of leadership positions. But when I was in high school, I was able to participate in mock trial and debate, and we partnered with other colleges in the area who became our mentors and coaches, and that gave me an interest in going to pursue law as an ultimate career.
So we were in Puerto Rico for 3 years, and then we moved to Connecticut. And I went to Hartford High, I went to UConn, University of Hartford, and from there, I'm the eldest of 3 children, had a very strict dad who only allowed me to go out if it was related to school stuff. So to that end, guess what I did? I became very involved in school activities. That was the way to do it.
My mother read libraries. She didn't read books, she read libraries, and she taught me. I learned how to read when I was 3, sitting on my father's knee, and he'd be watching cartoons or reading cartoons or reading the sports page, and I'd sit on his knee and I learned to read.
My high school teachers were so much, focused and determined to give their best to us. And those were also my influences outside of my home. And then they used to say, at that time, you can do anything you want.
My best friends were my cousins, who were the ones that took me under their wing and taught me Spanish. And then I came to Connecticut. I still had that New York accent. So when I went to register for high school, because now I'm going into the 9th grade, thank God for my cousin who went with me to navigate how I was going to register for high school classes, right? Immediately, they wanted to put me in general classes. My cousin said, no, that's not what we're going to do. She's going to college prep and academic classes. So I had a cousin who was only 2 years older than me. I didn't know. And then guess what? They put me, because of this accent that I had, this New York accent, they put me in a English as a second language.
Wonderful teachers, just spectacular teachers. This tiny little town with this tiny little school, spectacular teachers. And the superintendent had gone to Dartmouth. So they got interested in me. They actually created a scholarship committee to send me to college, to Dartmouth, or wherever I was going to go. I applied to all the schools in New England, in Boston, Harvard, Northeastern, Boston University. Got into Harvard, got into Dartmouth. Harvard gave me more money, and I said at 18 and a half, I've been to Boston. So I think that was why I rejected Harvard, although the person they sent to interview me from Harvard was some old dude with a funny little jacket and a little hat. I mean, it's like, duh. The guy who interviewed me from Dartmouth was a doctor in Hyannis, cool guy. So anyway, I went to Dartmouth. Class of 1963, 750 young men, 2 blacks. Me and a guy named Floyd Peterson. Class after me, 1.
So let's talk about your Dartmouth years. You using your words, Poe.
Yeah, all kinds of money.
From Falmouth. They gave you all kinds of money.
Yeah, thank God. But, I worked my tail off in 2 or 3 jobs. In the course that I was there, always working in the dining room. The story of the drive to Dartmouth is one of the great experiences of my life, knowing my father. He didn't like going over the bridge, so it was a big deal. So he calls up his...
The Bourne Bridge?
The Bourne Bridge, yes.
Ah.
He didn't like, well, no,
I don't
we
blame
barely
him.
did that. I was not a good student the first 2 years. Then I discovered the part of the library where nobody went except me. I was up in the highest part of the library. I found a table with a lamp, and I turned my entire education around. I went from Dartmouth was on a 5-point program back then. An A was 5, down through an F. And my average the first couple of years was a little over 2 coming to 3. I got a letter the first summer saying, we're not used to giving this kind of money to somebody with these kinds of grades. So I decided to straighten myself out, found myself a wonderful place to study, and my last 2 years I had somewhere between a 4.4 and a 4.7. So
Wow, good for you. What was your major?
Sociology. I wanted to be a criminologist.
Why?
I have no idea, but I must have read about it somewhere. I can remember when I was doing the kind of reading that I did. Then I got into political science in a big way. That phenomenal political science department, two wonderful professors.
You made friends when you were in college easily? Yeah.
Yeah, easily. I had lots and lots and lots of very good friends, most all of whom were white.
Why did you decide to go to law school?
I think I always wanted to go to law school, always, meaning once I got to college and decided that I was going to major in this and major in that I was going to apply to law school someplace.
Most of us, my close friends, they went on to do PhDs, and they did excellent in their schooling. From there, I went to the university after high school. So it prepared me to, with the love of the teachers, with the love of my family, my father. So those were obviously challenging moments, but also making me to aspire for bigger things in life.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard these stories many times, obviously, but it sounds like there's a lot of passion. Maybe not a lot of resources, but a lot of passion.
And you can overcome those limited means if you have the desire.
So you went to school in small town Pakistan, and then where did you go to college?
I went to college away from my village. Our high school was away from our own village. I went to pretty far away. There's a university at that time. It was Agriculture University. One of my classmates and myself, we both ended up going to that university. I would say it was 5 to 6 hours bus ride at that time. Then the name of the university is Agriculture University, Faisalabad. And I was doing my BSc honors in that university. When I was selected, leading on to the next phase in my life, I was selected to become an Army officer as a cadet in 1972. I couldn't finish the BSc honors, but I was selected right after 71 war between India and Pakistan. I was a cadet and went to the Pakistan Military Academy from that university.
So talk a little bit about the military academy and the experiences you had there and sort of what that has sort of left you with. I know that has had a pretty significant impact on you throughout your life.
Pakistan Military Academy is akin to West Point. It's a very rigorous course for 2 years. We were 314 cadets, and we passed out 251 or something, 250 or 251. So that academy training is very, very rigorous. It prepared me physically, educationally. It's a leadership academy in many ways. It was a very, very trying circumstances to be constantly in the race in the academy. That was coming from a very humble background, going to the Pakistan Military Academy, which is very prestigious institute in Pakistan till today, was a very, very major springboard for me to speak.
Do you think that's where you get most of your discipline from? Is from sounds like you had the passion from your early years.
I think I did have the passion, because if I didn't have the passion to become an officer from where I started, none of my siblings had the opportunity to go to school. My father couldn't read and write, but school, and school, that made me a passionate reader. And it cemented my belief to be constantly, endlessly striving for something big.
So let's talk about your childhood. I've seen some adorable photos of you as a little one, and if you could talk to us about sort of what was it like growing up for you, and sort of when was that first moment that you thought about being a lawyer?
Well, I'm here today because my dad, after visiting the States, decided to immigrate here in 1961. His first job actually in the States was as a dishwasher for a restaurant in Long Island. Then he decided to settle in Louisiana, and a year later my mom joined him. He ended up getting a master's at LSU and also Tulane, and that's where I was born, in New Orleans. My brother and sister and I grew up in the South. It was a little bit difficult at times because we were mocked, I'll put it lightly, and often we would go to places where people wouldn't wait on us. And as young children, we had no idea why that was happening. And I think that sort of contributed a little bit to my being introverted early on, because I wouldn't understand when I went to a place in public how people would react so negatively towards me without me having done anything. So that was a lot of what it was like growing up in the South. But we became very engaged in the Asian Pacific American community. We went to Chinese school on Saturdays, and then we engaged in different cultural programs with the Asian community where we were growing up. And they gave me a sense of community. And so when I went through school and then eventually to high school, I participated in a lot of different activities. I was on the debate team and the mock trial team, but I was also on, volleyball, swimming, and track, and other programs, and took a lot of leadership positions, all because I felt the sense of community that way. Even though there were only a handful of Asian people in my school, I mean, literally maybe 5, including my brother, my sister, and I. But when I was in high school, I was able to participate in mock trial and debate, and we partnered with other colleges in the area who became our mentors and coaches, and that gave me an interest in going to pursue law as an ultimate career.
Awesome. What did you think you wanted to do with a law degree?
Well, initially I thought all lawyers they were litigators. My high school swim coach was a volunteer coach. He was a lawyer. He was a litigator. He's also a state bar president, but gave his time to coach our swim team in high school. And with moot court, mock trial, I thought that was all litigation. And it wasn't until after I started having experience in the legal profession that I realized there are other practice areas that I found more interesting. And also that there's other ways that you can use a law degree besides just being a lawyer or having a trial practice.
Absolutely. And obviously high school to college. If you could remind me where you went to college and what was your major and what were the activities that you were engaged in while in college?
Sure. So I went to Duke University, and my major was political science and comparative studies. I was on the crew team, road crew for a semester or 2 to study abroad in China, where I met my now husband. We were studying in Nanjing University. I also started the Duke delegation to the North Carolina Student Legislature, because it was an activity that I participated in when I was in high school. And I took the time after my freshman year to really engage in a lot of different things in the community and not let the school wash over me, which is something, as a freshman, I was just really going with the flow and not really getting any foothold in anything I was doing. I had a work-study job where I was a lifeguard, so I met a lot of people who were hanging out at the outside pool. But we also had other jobs working in research labs with the Duke Medical Center, and that also gave me an understanding of other types of areas that I could pursue. But ultimately, I decided to focus on the law after going to Duke undergrad. Some of my friends that I met at the pool were law students at Duke, and they suggested I go to the law library. So I went, and then they opened up the Martindale Hubble, which was not online, it was only in book form, lots of volumes. And they suggested I focus on these firms that had more than a couple of pages, because those were the large law firms, and find out about them and see if there was any of those that I might be interested possibly in working in after becoming a lawyer or when I went to law school. And I did that, and it turned out okay. It made some sense, and maybe it's because I just followed their guidance, but it was a good path for me.
And you came to one of the best law schools in the country, the University of Connecticut School of Law. And what prompted you to come to Connecticut and to come to UConn specifically? And I love your phrase, you did not want your undergraduate experience to sort of wash over you.
There were a couple of factors. I applied to actually 15 law schools, believe it or not. Got to do a number of different ones. UConn was incredibly attractive because at the time they were really trying to work on increasing their diversity in their student body. It offered me a very, very nice opportunity to come up, and so I did. Also, my husband was working as a banker in New York City and was interested in staying in the area, and so we ultimately thought we'd settle in Connecticut where his family is, and so it made sense. Some of the folks at some of the large law firms said that UConn was the best provincial law school they knew of, sometimes better than other schools. And so it had good reputation. At the time, there was also a Black Student Lawsuit Association and a Latino Lawsuit Association, but there wasn't an Asian Lawsuit Association. So my first year, I and a group of folks got together and we founded the Asian American Law Student Association, which is still going really strong. So we're really happy about that.
My mom and dad didn't finish high school. So for me, the whole impact of my legal career, having my family be a part of that, they always push for excellence, right? But I didn't come from the kind of family that, you know, we came home from school and we sat around the table and talked about, oh, what school are you going to be going to, and how about law school? That wasn't the kind of environment that I had. English, again, was my first language. For 3 years, I lived in Puerto Rico. My best friends were my cousins, who were the ones that took me under their wing and taught me Spanish. And then I came to Connecticut. I still had that New York accent. So when I went to register for high school, because now I'm going into the 9th grade, thank God for my cousin who went with me to navigate how I was going to register for high school classes, right? Immediately, they wanted to put me in general classes. My cousin said, no, that's not what we're going to do. She's going to college prep and academic classes. So I had a cousin who was only 2 years older than me. I didn't know. And then guess what? They put me, because of this accent that I had, this New York accent, they put me in a English as a second language.
I was thinking remedial English.
Hilarious to me. And the teachers were like, what is she doing here? So I got pushed into a high honors class instead from that. But all of that said to me is, wow, you know, people are prejudging me. People are making assumptions about what I can or cannot do.
Tell me about your higher education. What was your bachelor's in at UConn?
So yeah, I graduated from Hartford High. I was involved in the student council and the girls league, and that kind of gave me a taste for government and what that all meant. And then I went to UConn, and there I got my BA, and then graduated, and I was like, wait a minute, I can't, these job offers that I'm getting, I could have gotten when I got out of high school. There's a reason that everything happens in your life. It wasn't luck, but rather I had the opportunity to go ahead and get my master's in public administration through a HUD grant, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, who, as a matter of fact, I ended up working for 32 years. I literally worked for HUD for 32 years.
I didn't know that.
And so I got a scholarship, Master's in Public Administration, concentration in urban planning.
And that explains the loyalty that you had because of that assistance that you received, because you worked for them, like you said, 30 years.
32 years, and my professor was the one who was one of the ones who pushed me and said, Marilyn, okay, we're going to get you this job. And he's the one he was at my graduation when I graduated from law school.
Aww.
We are still best of buddies. He was always my support network.
That's
Larry
wonderful.
Thompson, thank you for always being there for me.
I think I always wanted to go to law school, always, meaning once I got to college and decided that I was going to major in this and major in that I was going to apply to law school someplace. And then I had that wonderful interview with the dean at Yale, because I wanted to go to Yale. I didn't want to go to Harvard. That's an interesting other story, because one of the most important people in my life was a guy whose father created Stop and Shop. And he had gone to Harvard undergrad and Harvard Law School. We became close friends. When I graduated Dartmouth, he said, I'm going to write you a letter because I want you to go to Harvard Law School. I didn't apply to Harvard Law School. But on the day that the letters came out telling people that they'd been admitted, my roommate, they'd created this phenomenal facility all the way across campus. Walking was, miles we would walk every day and not even think about it. But anyway, he came back and said, there's a piece of mail for you from Yale, and it's thick.
I have to say, when I first started initially, because I mentioned these other cliques, I felt that I wasn't immediately welcomed by that particular group of folks. But through study groups and the mock trial experience, I got to become friends with two of the people from that group, and then they all sort of accepted me in that group. But when I was forming the Asian American Law Student Association, there really were probably about 5 of us at the time, but we had non-Asian people, some of my housemates, who would come to our meetings and would be supportive, and we would join with BALSA and the Latino Law Association and doing different activities, and I think that helped with building the community.
Yeah, so
That's awesome.
here I find myself, this Hartford Public High School student, now has her BA from UConn, a major university, right? Yeah. University of Hartford.
And a master's.
MBA, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I was a major in the Pakistan Army, close to 16 years. I was a major, and I was posted on the border of Iranian and Pakistani border, where the smuggling, a lot of, back then in the 1980s, there used to be a lot of Russian arms and ammunition which was being smuggled into Iran and then into Pakistan. But on one of the days, we were outnumbered. I lost 3 of my soldiers in ambush, and we captured about 18, 19 trucks, big trucks of ammunition and Kalashnikov rifles. I was shot, 1 bullet in my chest and 1 bullet coming into my arm. My arm was shattered, and that I lost 2 soldiers right in front of my eyes. When I was wounded, and it is on the border, which is away from any hospital or anything where you can get that urgent medical assistance. So I was wounded around 11:30 in the morning. They helicoptered me to Karachi, which is the biggest city, somewhere around 9 p.m. And your mom was somehow left behind. And my arm was so bad, they wanted to amputate that. And they couldn't find your mom to give a consent. They took those 2 bullets out. And during that process, it was very hard for you guys. You were put in a camp. I was in a hospital. So that recovery was very, very large. So I had done law while I was in the Army, in my previous assignment in the evening program, without knowing that law is going to be my savior. And I will be practicing law for the rest of my life.
Graduation was a major celebration in my family. I had aunts coming from Puerto Rico and all over the country coming into DC. I was definitely the first person in my family to ever graduate from law school.
The whole Connecticut legal community scene came back, and then in 2000 started the Connecticut Asian Pacific Bar Association, because we didn't have one here.
Mm-hmm. We did not.
We did not, and now we do.
Now we do.
I went to work for Ribicoff and Kotkin, the first black attorney in a firm larger than 5 in the history of the state of Connecticut. And we proposed to the partners, Ribicoff and Kotkin, that we would write a partnership agreement that would protect them for the rest of their lives. We did. It did. They looked at us and said, "Get out." So that firm promptly came to an end at that point.
I moved to DC, was able to get a job in DC through HUD. Again, this is continuous service with HUD. And lived there for 13 years. And at the ripe old age of 35, I said, you know what? I need to become a lawyer, because that's what I said I always wanted to be. At the age of 36, I entered Catholic University and got accepted. Here's the kicker. Just so, again, everything happens for a reason in life. I told you that strict father that I had. Mm-hmm. He was an alcoholic. I'm going to say that. Sonia Sotomayor's father was also an alcoholic. Just saying all of that because, your circumstances don't dictate necessarily what you end up doing. But at his funeral, many of his friends, and I didn't know this about my father, always came to him for advice. I got my acceptance letter to attend, get a little choked up. out there. I got my acceptance letter to go to law school 2 weeks after his funeral. And so now I had even more motivation, right? I'm doing this for my dad.
Yeah.
So I went to night school.
You did.
4 years because I continued to work.
At HUD?
At HUD,
Wow.
full time.
I actually didn't get very involved with the NAPABA or the Asian Bar until after I graduated from law school. In 1994, when I was going down to look at Atlanta in April, my uncle, Judge Al Wong, invited me to a dinner that they were having where they were getting APA attorneys together to meet with the then president of NAPABA, Brian Sun. And they ultimately formed the Georgia affiliate to NAPABA out of that meeting. And it's the first time that I realized that there were like thousands of other Asian Pacific American attorneys all across the country who were experiencing, racism and bigotry and bias and all these things that I thought that were just, that I was going through. Well, when I was in Georgia, I became the editor of the newsletter and then joined the NAPABA board in 2001 as their VP of Communications and ultimately served as president of NAPABA in 2005, 2006. And then went on to chair the ABA's GP Solo, General Practice Solo and Small Firm Division, and then went back to NAPABA to be their NAPABA Law Foundation president for a couple of years, and then got on the track for the Connecticut Bar Association.
Then came here to Connecticut, passed the bar, and after getting the license, 2 or 3 days after the license, I appeared before a court. I passed the bar exam in 1999, and Professor Litwin was in attendance. We came from Austin, Texas, and the moment I have a license, I opened my office.
I was a litigator. I did criminal, I did civil, I did appellate work, I did everything.
And I think it's important for purposes of capturing history for people to understand how much time John Rose spent figuring out how to create opportunities for young black women, young black men, frankly, people of color, not just black people, people of color.
There's an entity that still exists. It's now called the George Crawford Black Lawyers Association. When I got to Hartford, I tried to create with the black lawyers in New Haven. And New Haven had a small coterie of like 5, 6, 7 black lawyers most of them were in solo practice. I went to Hartford and there was a group of young people who were coming into the practice at that point. We put together something called, I named it, the George W. Crawford Law Association. No black came later. And it was dedicated literally to making opportunity for young people of color to become associated with one another, to talk the law, to learn the law, to be better than they were before. And it's lasted a long time.
We've been doing a lot in NAPABA with the anti-Asian hate movement, making sure that students have support, can have their stories told, know where to go to get assistance. We're working with other organizations like AJC, and also working, with the legislature, the U.S. legislature, and also the state legislature on the anti-Asian hate crime, anti-Asian hate Act. And here in Connecticut, I'm co-chairing the Connecticut Hate Crimes Advisory Council along with Judge Douglas Levine. We're working to hopefully prevent and combat hate crimes through legislature and other avenues.
I think documenting stories of attorneys of color is so important because those are histories that fuel the next generation. So, for example, the first black woman to graduate from the University of Connecticut, that's so important to remember because when you think about how she paved the way for me to attend UConn Law and then go on to become the first black editor-in-chief of the Connecticut Law Review, our flagship journal, then you remember that now it's incumbent upon you to pave the way for others. So I think as long as we keep these stories alive, there's nothing that we can't do within the Connecticut Bar and beyond.
This project is key for creating the history that someone can look back upon to say, hey, I'm not alone. If I look at a timeline and I see a bunch of white male faces, I'm not represented. If we don't have a timeline, if we don't have attorneys of color in positions of power, and how did they get to be in those positions of power? It was through making the connections. But having connections isn't enough. Knowing that you belong comes from having a history. And if we don't record this history, it will be lost.
Giving young people the opportunity to see that there is a place from which others like them have come and risen to another place. Without it, we're not doing anything for young people. It's important that the world, such as it is, even our little world, see an organization, an entity like this expanding upon the opportunity for young people to see, oops, there was this guy, this old dude who practiced law for 100 years, and there was this really young person, and they're doing it today, and they know one another, they're dealing with one another, they're talking to each other.
I think one of the most important results of this project is honestly a sense of pride. You know, we get to see people who look like us, people from our communities who have done these incredibly important things and have reached these, you know, milestones, and we're proud of that. We get to take that. And it's something that gets you out of bed in the morning. It's something that gets you through tough times like 3 years of law school, knowing that somebody in your community, somebody who looks like you, has done this and has excelled at this, and you can too. And that's one of the most important part about telling our stories and keeping them alive.
Support for this project, both financially and also submitting information so that we can have a clearer picture of what the diverse paths are in Connecticut, is key, because it's history. We're making history, but if we're not writing it down, how are we going to know? And whoever is writing history is the one that's going to write the narrative. So why don't we write the narrative, because we're writing the history?
We're continuing to break barriers, and we need to continue to support each other. For me, I just know that it's our duty, it's our obligation.
The biggest takeaway from the judgeship is humility, humility and humility. Give people their day, be patient. You have many cases as a judge, but this is the case for this person who's in front of you. It matters to that person.
Probably the thing that I'm most proud of in terms of development, that is to say, the all of the associated or bar associations that have come into play, come into existence, which continue to exist to this day and represent the young lawyers of color from practically every nation, a wonderful thing. It's one of the best things that's ever happened, in my opinion, to the bar associations of this state and make life better amongst each other for.
I'm going to continue to support the CBF and the CBA. Hope to do a lot more with things in Connecticut as well with our Hate Crimes Advisory Council, trying to get out more community awareness now that we've gotten a lot of the recommendations in place and some of the legislation we want to have passed. We really want to spread the word out to the community so that everyone can do what they can from where they are.
We are here to serve people. You know, there's this, I mean, the money, the dollar amount and fees, and all, we all need that. But if we have the overarching, we all come to law, I might be wrong, but I think the overarching objective, if it should be service to our fellow citizens, our fellow beings, money will come.
But quoting from my favorite, the Honorable Sonia Sotomayor, it is important for all of us to appreciate where we come from and how that history has really shaped us in ways that we might not even understand or even imagine. So please share your stories. They impact people, they make a difference in people's lives.
My message is always to students: service, service, and service.
Please join us in writing the history. Learn more about supporting the Attorneys of Color Living History Project by visiting the Connecticut Bar Foundation website at ctbarfdn.org. On behalf of all whose footsteps we follow and those whose trails we continue to blaze, thank you.